We are doing things that will make lawyers be the best lawyers that they can be in this country. And frankly, the sole drive there is to make sure that lawyers are there for the public and the people, the individual clients that they serve.
Today on Law Next, a conversation with Judy Martinez, who in a few weeks will take office as president of the 400,000-member American Bar Association. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment. But first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, on to this week's interview. Judy Martinez, honored to have you on the program today.
Thank you. Delighted to be here, Bob.
Judy, one thing I've observed over the years is that being the president of a bar association is a lot of work, and being the president of the American Bar Association is even more work. So why did you want to take on that role?
Well, I've been involved in the organized bar for the entirety of my career, dating back to my end of my first year of practice. And what I found over the years was that has become, to me, an essential part of being a lawyer. It has exposed me to viewpoints and opinions and positions of others that vary widely and, in fact, may be quite different than mine. And through discourse that happens in the organized bar with lawyers, judges, and members of the public, and others who care about issues of importance to the public and the profession, I think we become better lawyers. So my work in the ABA started those many years ago, as well as at the local and state bar level. And as a consequence, I grew in my beliefs that being a part and contributing in some way to the American Bar Association was what I wanted to do, and did so over many years, and consequently ended here with this call to service as president in the year to come.
You really do. I mean, I'm of course familiar with your background, but I was looking at it with a sharper eye, I guess, in preparation for this call, and you have a pretty admirable and lengthy history of community service, of pro bono service, of involvement, as you say, not just with the ABA, but with your state, the Louisiana bar in your state, the New Orleans bar in your state. I mean, what was it that first kind of propelled you to want to volunteer in those ways when you were a young lawyer? I mean, it really started, it looked to me like right when you're out of law school.
I guess the roots of it were in my family, Bob. My parents were always those who gave back to their community in the ways that they could, and they engaged the 4 children that they had in doing that very early in life. I remember always at Christmas time collecting styrofoam in the weeks leading up to Christmas, the styrofoam that encased the small appliances that were put on display in my father's furniture store in the Upper Ninth Ward in New Orleans. And we would take that styrofoam and then decorate it with foil and fill it with all kinds of little Christmas decorations and candies, and bring those little Christmas centerpieces, as we called them, to in a senior home. And my parents took on those kinds of projects with us and made sure that we were a part of the giving. And as a consequence, we learned all sorts of skills, I think, and learned the true meaning of being a part of a community. And when I went to law school, I didn't really have an understanding of how that would translate and permeate what I wanted to do as a lawyer. But I was at law school at Tulane and started in 1979, a graduate of 1982, and went to an afternoon seminar in a classroom and heard a group of attorneys talking about death penalty, capital habeas work. And one of them particularly struck me, a gentleman by the name of Sam Dalton, now deceased. And when I heard him talk about how he contributed, I just realized that in some small way I wanted to make a contribution, whether at the direct services or at the policy level and in the organized bar, making the profession stronger for the true purpose of being able to serve the public better.
So the annual meeting of the American Bar Association is coming up soon in San Francisco. You'll be taking the helm as president. What do you hope to achieve during your year in office?
Well, the good news is for somebody coming into office in the ABA, you have much of a tremendous amount of foundation on which to build. And we are really looking at the leadership of the ABA in this day and age as a continuum of leadership, a strategic march toward our four goals. As you know, we only have four very important, equally important goals in the ABA. And those goals drive what we do. So, as a consequence, what I'll be doing is building on the good work of the current president, Bob Carlson, and those before him. In fact, just this past week, I gathered by telephone many of the past presidents of the association. I think there were 19 on the telephone conference call to talk about building on their earlier work and, more importantly, to help them understand how they can continue to be a significant part of the ABA. And so, with that in mind, what I'll be focusing on is driving those goals and putting as priorities the work that others before me have taken on, from everything's from innovation in the space in which we find ourselves and embrace with regard to the possibilities that technology brings, to driving a close to the access to justice gap as it exists in this country, to really stepping up our game and doing even more than we've done in the past under great leaders like Paulette Brown and others who have focused on diversity and inclusion, with emphasis this year particularly, while always continuing to strengthen what we do, and we need to do so much more with regard to race and ethnicity and gender, but focusing on our colleagues with different abilities in the LGBTQ community so that we really are embracing them and making sure that we have all their talents at the table for the benefit of the public. And we have some very exciting opportunities this year to focus on issues of importance to our country, like voting rights, as we celebrate the centennial of the 19th Amendment this year. And we'll be launching a robust program throughout the year of education and, most importantly, of engagement of our state and local and affinity bars across the country, who are very desirous of more engagement and community work that they can do and take on as lawyer statespersons that they have among their ranks, and much more. We'll be building on topics of lawyer wellness that have been so much the focus area of Bob Carlson and Hillary Bass before me. And of course, we'll be making the case and making the statements that we think are essential and appropriate for the ABA to speak out on with regard to the rule of law, which is our fourth goal.
So, I mean, you're coming into office in a year or after a year or a couple of years that have been a little tough for the ABA. You've seen dues revenue go down last year by $1.3 million. There were budget cuts, buyouts, layoffs, a major embezzlement scandal for the association. And I see it here and there, people questioning, is the ABA still a vital organization to the legal profession? Is it still a relevant organization to the legal profession? What do you say to people who ask that?
If only I had 2 hours to sit down with each and every one of those individuals to talk with them, to
We got
share my
time.
passion for what I know, not think what I know the ABA means in this country, not only to American lawyers and lawyers beyond, but also to the public, because our most essential value, I believe, is that we are the voice of the legal profession in this country. And frankly, whether we have had challenges on membership or any of the other items that you list in your question, the here and now is that I think that we are at a significantly exciting moment for the ABA, Bob, because of what we're doing to really put in place game changers for the ABA. Everything from the new membership model that we've just only a month and a half ago launched, which brings forth to anyone who wants to join more affordable ABA dues, but most importantly, value in their membership that they have never seen the likes of before, from the largest CLE library that'll be available to lawyers in this country, to content that'll be above and beyond what they've seen out of the ABA before, to exciting ways of connecting with lawyers across the country and others who care about the issues we care about. And those include, as you know, independence of the judiciary, access to justice, substantive competency, technological competency, and so much more. So if anyone has ever had a conversation with you where they've doubted, as you say, the value, I can tell you that they should look and look again right now, because we are doing things that will make lawyers be the best lawyers that they can be in this country. And frankly, the sole drive there is to make sure that lawyers are there for the public and the people, the individual clients that they serve.
Do you think that the drop in revenue last year was a concern, and this new dues structure that you just referred to, which puts forward a much more straightforward, I guess, dues structure than was in existence before, and as you say, also makes more available to dues paying members kind of behind the firewall of membership. Um, do you think that that's going to address the dues issues, the
So I
revenue
think a few
issues rather?
things.
Yeah.
I think this strategic move by the American Bar Association is well thought out, and it is one that will take some time as it goes forward in order for us to see the benefits of not only on the revenue side, but most importantly, the strength and retention of members for the long haul. That's number one. Number two, I can tell you that I have spent this last year as president-elect traveling the country, and particularly and specifically reaching out to law students and young lawyers. And what I am hearing is that they are very excited about this. They are excited about the ABA's real focus on young lawyers and on law students. And there was no greater demonstration of that, I think, than this year when Bob Carlson and I headed out and went to law school after law school, went into classrooms to talk to law students, sat down with faculty for an hour at a time, met with deans to really understand what they believe that they see and want out of the profession of the future, and how the ABA will continue to lead in that regard. So when I sat down with student leaders of 20 to 25 in a room, the leaders of all the student organizations on the law school's campus, and heard from them, I think we've gotten the kind of input that will make a difference for the ABA, and we will continue to have our eyes and ears open and listening to them and what they want and need for the future. Now, that's not to say in any sense that we will not keep up what we need to do with regard to practitioners who are out there each and every day, who want to understand how to be more competent, who want to understand all they need to know about being the ethical lawyer that they need to be, who want to understand what they need to know about the new horizons of technology and innovation. But we also know that pipeline of individuals, the talent that we're bringing in because of diversity and inclusion efforts into the profession, is critically important for the future of the ABA, and we're listening.
Judy, you alluded to serving the goal or addressing the goal of enhancing access to justice. You were the chair of the ABA's Presidential Commission on the Future of Legal Services, which 3 years ago released a comprehensive report on the future of legal services in the United States. It was, I think, by any standard, a groundbreaking and certainly an important report that documented the fact that most people living in poverty and many moderate income people in this country just do not receive the legal help that they need. And I think the report very explicitly laid part of the blame for that on the legal profession, saying, quote, the legal profession continues to resist change, not only to the public's detriment, but also its own. Another criticism I've heard of the ABA at times is that it's complicit in resisting change. That it pursues this sort of mentality that this is kind of a divide in the legal world between lawyers and non-lawyers, and that interferes in the kind of reform in delivery of legal services that could help address the justice gap. So, I mean, what do you feel that insofar as the legal profession continues to resist change, that the ABA is complicit in that?
So what I believe is that the ABA, through works even earlier than the Commission on the Future of Legal Services, which I was privileged to chair, but dating back to the Pound Conference in 1976. That's a conference that out of it came the whole notion of dispute resolution, alternative dispute resolution. And when you look back, even I think within the report of the Commission on Futures from August of 2016, there's a wonderful quote there from Chief Justice Berger. And it says, and I quote, "It is up to us to demonstrate whether we will be able to adapt the basically sound mechanisms of our system of law to new conditions." And I think whether you look at Ethics 2020, the work of the Futures Commission, or others, I think, in fact, the ABA is leading that dialogue. The ABA is leading others to that conversation. And what we know is that our role is one insignificant part of being a convener that brings people together of differing views, those traditionalists you talk about, those who have one view of what the profession should be versus another, and we bring them together for dialogues such as occurred at the Stanford Summit on Innovation in May of 2015, which the Futures Commission partnered with Stanford on. And then we see those kinds of conversations popping up post Commission on Futures report, exactly as the Futures report envisioned, as the Commission itself envisioned. Now, the Futures report is not ABA policy, but what it has done is allowed for conversations to be had all over the country about what kinds of innovations, whether technology driven or regulatorily driven through reforms, may in fact be for the benefit of the public. And so those types of findings that you spoke to that were in the Futures report, as well as the recommendations for exploration of how legal services should be delivered, for experimentation by states, which are the regulators, as you know, of the regulatory reform arena, is very exciting to see. And we hope to understand how those conversations are going forward. And we will watch them, we'll observe them, and really see with, I guess I'd call active listening, active observation about what next steps should be.
And by conversations, I assume you're alluding in part to what's going on in California right now, Utah, and certainly on varying degrees in other states as well. But in particular in California, which has had this task force that made a number of recommendations just recently, just earlier this month, to be looked at further, that would explore issues around private ownership, investment in law firms, non-lawyers practicing law. Are those the kinds of conversations you're talking about? And what's the ABA's role in kind of furthering those conversations?
Well, that is one, absolutely, that's one example of the kind of conversations. The work of groups such as April, which we just saw come to pass, the start of what they talked about and had similar type conversations on advertising and marketing. What we've heard from the Conference of Chief Justices when they, in 2015, adopted a resolution with regard to the continuum of legal services that they perceive may be necessary or should be explored for access to justice, for greater access to justice. Looking at the conversations that were spurred as a result of the model regulatory objectives that came out of the ABA House of Delegates and what's happened there. And there's many more examples, but there's also examples not only in the present, but how we've worked in the past as the American Bar Association. For instance, one example is, written conflict waivers. Those came out of, the conversations that were had at the state level in very few handful of states. And as the ABA actively watched and learned from not only the conversations, but when there was implementation, to really collect and look at the demonstration of how that worked. Was there harm to the public or not? What was the data that was collected? And we have to do a better job, of course, of doing that across the board when we look at these types of explorations that are going on. Quite a few years later, we came up with the changes to 1.7 on the model rules. This is a huge organization, as you know, Bob,
Mm-hmm.
and it is an organization that needs to listen to all perspectives and give guidance when it thinks appropriate and when it thinks that it's in the interest of the public. And I think that you will continue to see that legacy of the ABA to be thoughtful and to be guided by what it believes to be in the best interest of the public, and thus fulfilling its goals as we walk forward in the future. But needless to say, that change is incremental in great part, in many instances. This is a profession that has long been rooted in its traditions and values. All of us want to pull those forward, but do the best we can in what Justice Berger called, times of change and new conditions. And I think you'll see that, as I said, in the months and years to come, under my leadership and the leadership that will follow.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment, but first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support Law Next. And now, let's continue this week's interview. It makes me wonder. I mean, as we come into a time when it seems like change happens more quickly than it one time did, and I don't know if that's just a perception that I have as I get older myself. But does the ABA need to become more agile in order to respond to changing conditions in society and in the profession?
I think you're seeing exactly that. I think you're seeing a professional staff that has not only the wherewithal, the know-how, the experience set, but also are people who understand the complexity, but at the same time, the need for us to be ahead of change. We have some fabulous new individuals who have joined the staff from everywhere, from the realm of digital marketing to other areas in membership, that are really bringing forth a perspective that's fresh, a perspective that's really energizing not only the other staff, but the volunteer leadership. And as a result, that's contagious. And it certainly is helping me shape the time I'll spend this year and the efforts that I'll put forward on the subject matter that I think is important to all of us. So when you talk, for instance, about the rule of law and the persistent and consistent messaging that the ABA has put out on independence of the judiciary and its criticality to our democracy. We're looking at how we get that message out. How do we extend our reach and our influence to make sure that that message is being heard not only by lawyers across this country, but by even more so the public? We're talking about how we deliver the value that we deliver for competency, greater competency, and the tools that lawyers need to manage their practices by making the law practice division, which has so much, as you know, to offer to practitioners, both in-house as well as in small, medium, and large firms across this country, and even in unconventional or untraditional settings that lawyers are now working in, making that available to every lawyer who joins the ABA, making that available free, and giving them access to the Center for Professional Responsibility, which is our ethics home, so that they can have all that content if they join the ABA. So all of those are recent and I think extraordinarily powerful demonstrations of agility by the ABA. And again, I think there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, well, as a longtime member of the law practice management section, I'm certainly happy to see that, and I'm glad that access is going to be made available to everybody. Um, one other quick question on the maybe not a quick question. One other question on the report on the future of legal services was the kind of the overarching recommendation of that report. Was that the legal professions support the aspirational goal of 100% access to effective assistance for essential legal service, for essential civil legal needs for all people otherwise unable to afford a lawyer. And the report outlined a set of principles and recommendations for achieving that. So 3 years later, do you feel that we have made progress toward that goal? And what do you want to do as ABA president to further that progress?
The progress has been meaningful, and of course, I want to do more to further that goal and to really achieve more in the realm of access. It's been something that I've been dedicated all my life and professional career to, and is, different and unique sounding at the time, and perhaps even controversial at the time of setting up a pro bono project for a whole city was back when that was set up many years ago, decades ago in my own city. Um, Look at what's happened out of it and the number of people who serve by lawyers coming together and managing the notion of doing pro bono in a very systematic and strategic way, tackling problems of those in need. And so I see similarly what we're doing now in these conversations across states, in the workshops that the ABA and its Center for Professional Responsibility are having on, PBMR and regulatory entity regulation to understand more about that, in the policies that have gone to the House and House of Delegates and will continue to go to the House of Delegates on issues about access to justice, in the research that the Commission has done and the Futures Commission has carried forward and others are doing now with regard to the existing examples of those who are able to advocate for others who have legal issues and issues of life that they need to have and find solutions for within the justice system. For instance, I think there are 14 different types of what many call non-lawyer advocates or other advocates that are authorized and afforded under federal legislation and regulation for people today. And there are other notions of what we know is critically important to be explored, like online dispute resolution, looking at how online legal service document providers and others are able to deliver competent and ethically the products and services that they have to deliver, an issue that's coming before the House of Delegates at the upcoming meeting. So yes, I think there's much more that we can do, that we should explore, that we should have conversations about. And there's no better place for lawyers who are interested in access to justice and really making a difference in that journey to make sure that people have what they need in order to solve their life challenges and problems than to turn and become engaged with the ABA, to learn more about it, to learn about how we can all contribute together, and most importantly, to bring forth their ideas, because it only takes an idea from one person to make a difference for a community and beyond.
One other goal you mentioned earlier in our conversation was that of in achieving greater diversity in the profession. It's funny because there was a book that just came out in the history of the ABA that happens to be titled "Best Men of the Bar." And in fairness, it's about the early years of the ABA, when it probably was all men. But I mean, what kind of score would you give the legal profession on achieving diversity, not gender diversity, but also diversity for, among people of color, for LGBTQ, for others? How are we doing on that count, and what more would you be like to be doing over the next year on that?
Well, it's obvious we've come a long way from where we were many years ago, but we haven't done enough and we have to do more. I always look at this issue that's very complex in terms of how we go about creating greater opportunities for individuals, no matter their walk of life, their color, their gender, their abilities, and more, from the perspective of the individual. Our profession is everyone's profession. It is, in essence, the public's profession. And so it's not a matter of so much welcoming individuals in as it is letting them know that there is a place for them that already exists. And we have to do that purposefully, affirmatively, consistently, and with every bit of might and will we have in each of us. Because we will never be the best that we can be for the public and the individual clients, whether corporations or small businesses or families or children that we serve, until we have all the talents at the table and in the room. Now, there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done by the ABA in many different corners of the ABA, following times when we weren't where we should have been in terms of leadership on these issues. But if you look at the diversity of the ABA staff, if you look at the diversity of individuals coming to ABA leadership through the appointments process, you will find a richness that you have never seen before. But it's not only about the numbers, it's about making sure that there is opportunities for everyone to be involved in both association work and, most importantly, in the practices that they have each and every day. So the numbers in law firms are not where they need to be, nor are the opportunities. And we have to make sure that law firms are using the tools that are out there, as well as in-house law departments, using the tools that are out there and available that are extremely effective. For instance, the IAT, to allow you to engage in implicit bias testing of yourself, to understand your biases that are inherent in each and every one of us, and making sure that we're not standing silent when we hear someone say something that's inappropriate. Maybe whether intentionally or not, it's not enough to sit back and just listen and then walk out of that room and say to yourself or to someone else, I wish he or she hadn't said that. We've got to be more forthright. We've got to be more purposeful in advocating and guiding individuals to what is right. And until we do that and step up our game in that regard as individual lawyers, as law firm leaders, as corporate law department leaders, and as association leaders at each and every level of professional associations, I'll answer your question, Bob, by saying we haven't done enough and we can do more. But the good news is that we know that lawyers across this country, and I would suggest to you civil society in general, are looking to lawyers, are looking to the leaders to see how you treat someone with dignity and respect, how you go about solving tough problems and having tough and difficult conversations with civility, how you go about making sure that there is equal pay, how you go about making sure that the opportunities that are afforded so much of us because of where we live, on what street, or in what part of town is afforded to everyone. And those are something that no one president can take on and feel accomplished about. Those are jobs and duties and responsibilities that not only every president, but every member of our association needs to tackle. And I just ask that everyone join in making sure that we are doing our best in that regard.
Judy, we are near the end of our time, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
Well, thanks to you, I think there are an awful lot of issues and dialogues that go on following your good work and affording the opportunity for conversations like this to be had. So thank you, Bob. I also think that people who are interested in the work of the ABA need to understand that there is a place for them truly, no matter what their interest is, what their passion is, no matter what the subject matter of their conversation is, we are a large tent, as you said, with over 4,000 members. And that is what gives us our richness. That is what gives us our ability to know that when we speak based on policy adopted by the ABA House of Delegates, that we are speaking on behalf of the legal profession and know that our voice in that regard is heard. And there will always be, I know, a robust commitment by the American Bar. It is why I stay and have stayed engaged all these years on issues of criticality to our democracy, the independence of the judiciary, and the important rights of equality and fairness and due process that the ABA champions. So stay tuned for more in that regard, I believe, that we can say as we end this conversation, this particular conversation, and know that the ABA is a place where all lawyers can engage and be involved with the sole goal of making sure that we're serving the public and our clients to the best that we can in the administration of justice.
Well, Judy, thanks for all the important work that you've done throughout your career, and I, for one, will be staying tuned. I look forward to watching what you do and what the ABA does over the next year and into the future. I really appreciate your taking time out of what must be a very busy time preparing for your year to spend some time talking. Thanks a lot. It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks for your leadership.
And let me just take a moment to thank My Case again for sponsoring this show with thousands of customers. It's a trusted practice management solution helping lawyers across the country run organized, efficient, and successful law firms. Try them at mycase.com. That's mycase.com. And thanks, of course, to Ben Ambrogi for producing and editing the show. That's it for this week. This is Bob Ambrogi.